I have absolutely zero respect for genocide defenders like yourself.
Is there a reason you're avoiding the word invaded?
An invasion, it suggests an act of aggression. Israel is not the aggressor here.
You can avoid using the word invasion. If you want to talk about
But you haven't named your boss. I had to come to Russia to salvage our relations with forces in that country because Jackson is losing favor with his boss there. Who's paying you?
Joseph Stalin.
Your growth isn't organic. Your growth isn't organic. I've noticed there's a lot of posts about China and Russia.
You're right.
Who's
the
your
Russian
boss?
state, which has relations with Israel, is bankrolling yours truly. You can't monetize your YouTube account. You have no followers.
Because I'm not here to make money. I'm not a grifter like you. I'm here to make the future safer for my children. You are a war profiteer.
What do you disagree with the most?
He makes tens of thousands of dollars from this conflict.
I supported every effort by the Palestinians to secure a ceasefire.
I want to start there. One of your videos, I was just watching it before this show, and I'm going to read out what you said there and get Jackson's thoughts on it as well. But you said, someone said to you, do you hate Palestine? And you replied, how can you hate something that doesn't exist? And you posted that on X with a laughing emoji. So just to get your stance on Palestine before we get into the latest developments, Kushner's visit to the Middle East, al-Shara's visit to Trump, there's a lot happening. What's your stance on a two-state solution and on the state of Gaza right now?
Is that to me or to Jackson? Sorry, to me.
To you, Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I know Jackson's stance. Jackson recommends Hamas to have nuclear warheads. But let's going serious now. Yeah, would love to get your take on a two-state solution, Joseph.
So I'd start by introduce myself as a peace activist. I'm heavily invested in the conflict because I live here. I have children here. I want the best for my children and I want the best for my neighbors' children. I'm surrounded by Arabs and my everyday interactions with them are good. So when I make a statement like, how can you hate something that doesn't exist? I'm talking about the entity, the state of Palestine. There is no country called Palestine. There has never been an Arab country called Palestine. There are Palestinians, and there's millions of them that live here. They're my neighbors, and I want the best for them. But I think the best for my children and the best for their children is not two competing nationalist movements fighting for the same territory. I think as long as the Palestinian national cause is alive, there will be perpetual violence until the Zionist entity, Israel, is destroyed. And the easiest way to visualize that is if you look at any of the Palestinian organizations, from the moderates to the extreme, and you look at how they depict Palestine in any of their maps, in any of their logos, it's never the West Bank and Gaza. It's always from the river to the sea. It's always Western British mandatory Palestine. And so I'm against the creation of a Palestinian state because I believe it will lead to continual conflict. I'm for the Arabs that live here having the same rights as me, and I'm for their children having the same opportunities as my children. And yeah, that would be my views in a very concise.
Would there be any circumstances that would change your opinion on whether there should be a Palestinian state?
I think years and years of striving for a two-state solution, the Arabs being offered solutions. So the most generous offer would have been in 1937, when the Arabs were offered 96% of British mandatory Palestine, and they turned it down because the Jews having just 4% of the land, which is Islamic Waqf in the eyes of those that live here, was too much. This is Dar al-Islam for them, and there is no place for even the Jews having just 4% of that territory. And so in some utopian world, and I believe Jackson's a communist and they often believe in utopia, but in some utopian world where we could coexist and we could live alongside each other, absolutely. Actually, I'll give an even better example. A friend of mine, Palestinian, who lost his child to the conflict. I remember we were both looking at the Temple Mount, Masjid al-Aqsa, and he looked at me and said, peace will eventually come, because human life is more precious than blood and than soil and rocks, and I believe in that. I believe that human life is more important than soil and rock. This is just country, and I'd give almost all of it up if it meant we could have peace. But I don't believe there will ever be peace as long as these two nationalist ideologies are competing over the same territory.
Jackson, what do you say to people that are not in the Ben Gvir camp? Nuke Gaza. Palestinians don't deserve the same rights. Continue bombing Gaza. People like Joseph that just think a two-state solution is not feasible. And you had that last debate as well with what's his name, Shabosh, and he was making the argument that he believed in a two-state solution, but it's no longer feasible because you've got the MBS was meeting Trump. Trump is trying to get Saudi into the Abraham Accords, and MBS is standing his ground, saying there should be a Palestinian state. Is that still? First, what do you say to people like Joseph and their stance, which is in the middle but doesn't believe a two-state solution is possible? And if that's the case, how could a solution be found for disagreements like MBS and Trump?
Well, there's plenty of countries in the world today that don't recognize an Israeli state and only recognize a Palestinian state. So the whole idea that there is an Israeli state is just kind of funny. I mean, it's like a figment of the Zionist imagination. Ultimately, the Zionist entity, this genocidal beast, is carrying out exactly what my debate opponent said just a moment ago. He said, correct me if I'm wrong, you can interrupt me, but I think you said something like, I don't think that there can be a Palestinian state. It's not feasible. Well, there can't be a Palestinian state because your leaders right now, I mean, you said disregard Gallant, disregard Gvir, but ultimately these people control the national policy inside of Israel right now. Doesn't always have to be like that. It hasn't always been like that. But right now, to maintain this coalition, that's how it is. If they withdraw, if their parties withdraw from the coalition, Netanyahu loses his reign on power. And the truth of the matter is, Gallant, Gvir, the hardline nationalists, and genocidal freaks and maniacs, these are the people who call Gazans human filth, human animals. They say that they are going to erase Gaza. And I guess they're carrying out that goal. They're carrying out that job. Obviously, they haven't erased the total population yet, let alone even 50% of it. But they are carrying out the goal of erasing the Palestinian people and, even more acutely erasing the Palestinian people from their own land that they still have in Gaza. And that's even taking place throughout the so-called ceasefire as Israel continues to encroach on what territory they were supposed to control via the yellow demarcation lines. Initially, they're supposed to only control 53% of the territory of Gaza. Then they violated the deal, moved up the line to 58%. They still have 40 IDF military bases inside of the territory that Gaza is supposed to control. At the same time, they're not allowing food or medical aid into Gaza. A little bit of food, a little bit of medical aid, but not the amount that they promised. They promised 18,600 aid trucks into Gaza by now. But according to the United Nations, only about 3,600 or 4,000 aid trucks have entered into Gaza. That's an 80% failure from the Israeli government on the deal that they signed. And what does that cause to happen? It caused maternal care to not be allowed into Gaza. It causes infant mortality rates to rise in Gaza. So talk about a Palestinian people, a Palestinian state. I mean, you can't have that, I guess, if you are actively killing off the Palestinians. You've bombed at least 69,000 of them, probably far, far more, hundreds of thousands under the rubble that are still dead and buried, like some of the hostages, by the way, who were killed in Israeli airstrikes. So as for a Palestinian state, what are we supposed to do here? What is a state with no standing army? What is a state with no water rights? What is a state with no energy rights? This is what has been offered to the Palestinians, and that's no state at all.
Joseph, I'll let you respond, and then we'll go to some of... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to... I think, Jackson, you just answered the question with the final thing that you said. You said you disagreed with me, that there were many countries that recognize a country called Palestine, but many that don't recognize Israel. But then you ended that monologue, and we can go to genocide, we can go to aid, we can go to all the usual talking points that everyone rehashes again and again and again in every single debate. But I think you hit the nail on the head with your closing remarks. What is a state if it doesn't have a military? What is a state that if it doesn't have borders? What is a state if it can't defend those borders? Police that Israel, at will, can enter Ramallah, can enter Gaza City, can enter any Palestinian city. The Palestinians cannot do the same to Israel. The reality on the ground is there is no Palestinian state. And the reason there isn't a Palestinian state isn't for the reasons that you think. There have been numerous offers. The most recent generous offer that was made to the Palestinians in the name of peace was the 2008 plan by Ulmert, where the Palestinians were offered East Jerusalem as their capital, the old city in the Holy Basin to be under the custodianship of the Palestinians, the Jordanians, the Saudis, the Israelis, and the Americans. So it would be open to all faiths. The West Bank, they got what we call Judea and Samaria, which was traditionally called Judea and Samaria and renamed the West Bank when the Jordanians conquered it, Jordan being the East Bank. They were offered the entirety of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, with minor border adjustments, which would see the Palestinians receiving more territory than Israel would receive in exchange. So Israel would get Gush Etzion, they'd get Modina, they'd get some of the cities that border the Green Line, the 49 Peace Line. And the Palestinians turned down that. And at every opportunity, whether it was 96% of the land, whether it was everything that most people would call Palestine, like yourself would call Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, they've turned it down. And so the reason there isn't a Palestinian state is because they've turned it down on multiple occasions, because they've wanted the entirety of the land. And the countries of the world can recognize Palestine, but if the Palestinians are unable to hold that territory, then it doesn't exist. There is no country called Palestine. There never has been.
I want to go back to what's... go ahead, I'll let you respond, Joe Jackson. We'll go back to what's happening now on the ground, some of the statements made.
I mean, first of all, you left out going back even to Yasser Arafat, the deal was no standing army, no energy rights, no water rights. Again, like you say, well, they just didn't accept the deal. They just didn't accept the territory that we handed to them. Sovereign state is more than just the territory. A sovereign state is about for the ability for a people to determine their will, their free will. You said, well, the Palestinians don't have the capability to invade into Israel with their military. That's correct. No one's talking about the Palestinian. No one is talking about us wanting them to do that via giving them a Palestinian state. What we're talking about is having a sovereign country where the Palestinian people can dictate their own future and not be held hostage by their neighbors. That's the simple point here. Now, I think it's funny you keep bringing up this 1937, 96% argument. Joseph, why are you not upset about the fact that at the time when the Israeli settlers came to what is now Israel, they were initially trying to go to the West. They were trying to go, for example, to the United States and seek refuge there. But the United States rejected those offers. They said, we don't want any of the Jewish settlers in the United States. That's a documented historical fact. But apparently you're more upset about the fact that the Palestinian people rejected the offer to cede a percentage of their sovereign territory instead of being more upset about the fact that the American government said, we're not going to take a single Jewish settler.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Who are the settlers you're talking about that weren't allowed to go west?
There was a petition by the same group of people that eventually signed on to the Haavara Agreement to transfer their belongings and personal
Which people? Which
people?
people?
Yeah, which which people in the United States State Department explicitly signed the deal that said, no, we're not going to allow any Jewish
But the
people into
agreement
the
wasn't
United
between
States? I mean,
America.
this is
The
just such a
Haavara Agreement.
fantastic
The Haavara
Zionist
Agreement.
John Evans game that you want to play
The
with.
Haavara
What
Agreement.
day
The Haavara
in
Agreement.
the
Sorry,
1910s were they born on? I don't know. I can't name
the
the
Haavara
exact
Agreement was
person
in
that was trying to come to the
1933.
United States. But it is, do you deny the fact that they were
So
denied entry
I
into the
think you're-
United States? Jewish settlers were denied entry in the United States seeking
you're,
refuge?
I think you're getting your history confused or conflated. So the Haavara Agreement was an agreement between the Nazi Party and the Jewish Agency, which was in Israel. The Jewish and the agreement there saved ultimately 10% of Germans Jews. 10% of Germans Jews were saved in an agreement which allowed them to move to British Mandatory Palestine.
Yes, I know what this
on
is.
the condition that they were in condition. Let me.
Wait. You're just.
Why would the Jewish agency? 2 minutes. I'll ask a question directly.
You don't even know what you're
why would the
talking
Jewish
about.
agency? With all due respect.
Wait, Joseph.
With
You're
all
trying
due
to make
respect,
the claim
Jackson.
that I think the Haavara Agreement is about Jews going to America, which is not what I said. You're not even listening to what I had.
Okay. Sorry. That's what I was trying to understand. What were you saying? Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
You said which Jews wanted to leave Germany and go to the United States. The same Jews.
And then no,
that
I didn't say leave Germany.
Haavara
You said that. I never said leave
their
Germany.
belongings to what is now Israel. It's the same people. Same people that were fleeing Nazi persecution.
With all due respect, you misunderstand what the Haavara Agreement was. It was an agreement to save Jews by the Zionists. The Zionists wanted those Jews
when did I say
to
that
go
they?
to Israel.
When did I say that's not what it was? I agree with you that the Haavara Agreement. I agree with you. The Haavara Agreement was an agreement with the German Zionist Council and the foreign ministry of the economic ministry of the Nazi Party to transfer Jews and their belongings and their wealth to what is now Israel. I agree with you. You're simply not listening to what I'm saying.
So which Jews then? Which settlers? Are you saying just random German Jews wanted to go to America and they weren't allowed? Is that your argument?
I'm saying that the same Jews that fled Nazi persecution, who ended up going to Israel, were the same Jews that wanted to go to the West and were denied entry into the West. So they couldn't go there. So they went to what is now Israel.
America close.
And I'm asking you why you're not upset about that fact.
There's no
America
closed their doors.
They had to go to
there's no argument here. Britain
displaced 750,000 Palestinians. They forcibly removed from their land. You're more upset about the fact that the Palestinians didn't think that was a great idea than the fact that the United States says, no, we're not going to take the Jewish refugees.
Jackson, I'm genuinely just trying to understand your arguments here so I can see if I agree or disagree. If you're saying that America and Britain locked their doors during the Holocaust period, I agree with you. There's no argument there. Zionism predates Nazi persecution. Jews living in the land predates. So when you said settlers tried to go west, I just wanted to understand what you meant. And then you mentioned the Haavara Agreement, which confused me a little bit because it's completely separate to America. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Why are you bringing up how upset you are over the fact that the Palestinians didn't want to cede territory to settlers when the United States was the government who said, we're not even going to talk about ceding territory to Jewish refugees. We're simply not going to allow you in.
So we need to step back in history. Now, give me the courtesy of listening to my argument. Then if you disagree, and we can talk about that. So prior to the British taking mandate over Palestine, the territory belonged to the Ottoman Empire. As part of the San Remo, literally is the San Remo resolution, with the defeat of the Ottomans, the British were awarded a mandate over British Mandatory Palestine on the condition they establish a Jewish national home there. They honored the Balfour Declaration of 1917 and established a Jewish national home in the territory. And I'm sure you know this history, so I'm not teaching you anything new.
I'm just waiting for your answer.
So, yes, you're going to get it. And so the Jews were expecting the entire territory to be the Jewish national home. There were already Jews living there. Jews were the majority population of Jerusalem already in 1844, according to Caesar Famine, the French consul, and other people that were present at the time, so the Russian consulate, etc. And so the Jews were expecting this territory to be their home. The British took mandate, and the first thing the British did was give 78% of my country away to the Arabs. And what did the Arabs call 78% of Palestine? Did they call it Palestine? No, of course not, because back then it was the Jews that called the land Palestine. The Palestinian wine company wasn't Muslim, it was Jewish. The Palestinian electricity company was Jewish.
Because it was a simple question, but you're giving me the Zionist history lesson, and I'm not trying to interrupt.
I'm giving you. It's not a Zionist history lesson. It's the history lesson. It's the history lesson.
Yeah, it's your Zionist history lesson, but you refuse to bring up the fact that you are selectively outraged over the Palestinians who refuse to cede their territory. Their territory, as you admit,
how is it
4% of their
so
territory?
you're saying, so I think the point,
but you're not upset about the Americans who said we refuse any refugees.
So I think the point, Joseph, you're trying to make is that territory was historically Jewish territory. So therefore, they had more right to be in Israel than what we call now Israel.
Not just that. So the Ottoman Empire with its
Jews were there, but not Polish Jews, not Russian Jews, not Ukrainian Jews.
Actually, you're mistaken. All of those Jews were there. There were Jews from all over the world there.
Indigenous Jews, as you very well know.
All Jews are indigenous. All Jews are indigenous. There's a genetic
difference between the Jews in
what's
Europe
the genetic difference
versus the Jews in
but they have shared
Israel
ancestry
now, historically.
So I want to moving away from history. So we are where we are. And I think this all started when, Joseph, you made the point that you do not believe in a two-state solution. It just doesn't work. So my question to you is, what is the solution then? Because Ben Gvir, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it's always Ben Gvir that says these crazy statements. He said the following. I give him credit for always being honest and direct. He said, we have paid a lot of money for this war, so we need to divide how we make a percentage on the land marketing later in Gaza. I'm not sure if you've seen that clip, Joseph. We've done the demolition phase, which is always the first phase of urban renewal. We're talking about the demolition of Gaza and killing of tens of thousands. Now we need to build. It's much cheaper. And he's talking about how there's a plan to rebuild Gaza on Trump's desk. So this is Ben Gvir talking about the war in Gaza as kind of a business plan to rebuild a new Gaza. I want to first get your thoughts on this statement, and not Ben Gvir and all the statements, because there's some disturbing ones, but just particular statement. Go ahead.
That statement is almost irrelevant because Trump has his vision. And Trump is basically calling the shots. And Trump's vision isn't for Israel to annex Gaza, either the territory on the Israel side of the yellow line or the territory on the other side. That's not part of the plan. That's not part of Trump's vision. It completely contradicts everything that both Trump and Netanyahu are saying. I'd pay more attention to Trump and Netanyahu than fringe figures like Gvir.
But then Jackson makes a point. But Jackson makes a point. So first you said Trump calls the shots. Trump has asked for a ceasefire. Yet we're still seeing Israeli strikes on Gaza, and we're still seeing Israeli strikes on Lebanon. Now, Lebanon are more justified. We'll get to Lebanon later because Hezbollah is rearming. But on Gaza, the justifications tend to be not all the bodies have been returned, or one body. I think that Israel says that Hamas was staging them finding a body underground. They dug a hole, put the body there, put the dirt back on the body, and then dug it again and filmed it. And these were seen as justifications for strikes on Gaza. I'll let you correct me if I got it wrong. But what I'm saying is that it seems Trump is calling the shots to an extent. And also, as Jackson said, people like Ben Gvir, okay, they are fringe figures, but they do have influence on the prime minister.
They have influence in the sense that they were instrumental to the coalition. But even when Netanyahu went against their demands, they didn't leave the coalition. So they're basically, if they want a seat at the table, they have to follow Netanyahu. The strikes you're describing have all happened targeting Hamas military positions where Hamas are in violation of the ceasefire. I mean, the major condition of the ceasefire is for Hamas to disarm. Hamas have been explicit. They're not going to disarm. And
True. So but there's no timeline. There's no timeline. Sorry, yeah, but there's no timeline for the disarmament. So I think the strikes by Israel, where the justifications were different. There's one. I think there's an Israeli soldier that was struck by a sniper. Hamas said they were not responsible for it. They didn't have control on that territory, so they did not take responsibility.
They said they lost contact with their unit.
Correct.
But either
Yes.
way, Hamas positions are attacking Israeli positions, and Israel is responding to those positions. Now, Hamas may have lost contact with those positions that are firing on them, and they're firing back, but they're still firing, and Israel has a right to respond to those attacks.
Jackson, Joseph mentions one thing that I do agree on. Hamas is meant to disarm as part of the agreement, part of the peace deal. I know we've discussed this before, but Hamas has been explicit they do not want to disarm. Now, I know you've made a statement earlier about you think Hamas should be further armed, but how could we see that peace deal progress if Hamas does not disarm? And also, I'd love you to respond to Joseph's point on the strikes by Israel and whether they are justified.
Well, to get to your first point as well, because you brought up the reconstruction of Gaza and turning this into like a blockchain hub, a tax haven for the ultra elite and wealthy and whatnot. That's this plan that is being discussed. This is there's no reason whatsoever to trust anything that's coming out of the mouth of Trump or Netanyahu for that matter. It's not just that they're violating the ceasefire deals. And I also include the first ceasefire deal, which was struck in December, January of this year and last year. You've got Israel right now, which is currently occupying swaths of Lebanon. They're building a border wall there now. They're occupying swaths of Syria. They would love to occupy all of the territory of Gaza, but pursuant to the ceasefire, as you mentioned, they were only allowed to occupy 53% of the territory of Gaza. They increased the territory that they occupied to 58%. Why did they do that? I mentioned that earlier. The reason is quite simple. Israel claims that they got the incorrect deceased body of a hostage back from the Palestinians. Now, that's actually true. The Palestinians gave the wrong body back to the Israelis. And as unfortunate as that is, the truth of the matter is every single hospital inside of Gaza has been bombed. Israel does not allow in DNA testing equipment, DNA kits inside of Gaza. They've allowed in a small fraction of the promised medical aid that they said they were going to allow into Gaza pursuant to the ceasefire. None of which will help them identify the bodies of the hostages, which have been deceased for some time now. And as morbid and gruesome as it is, bodies decay, and you can't identify these things just through, looking at the bodies with your own eyes. You have to do DNA tests. So after they gave the wrong body back on accident, because they have no way of actually knowing whose bodies these are, what did Israel do? They began bombing, striking Gaza. They killed 82 civilians in a single night. They increased the territory that they control to 58% of Gaza. They have 40 military bases still past the yellow demarcation line. They're sniping at women and families who are walking for miles and miles and miles trying to come back to where their homes once were. And now all that remains is rubble because Israel bombed 80% of the buildings in Gaza. I don't trust anything that is coming out of the mouths of Netanyahu regarding, we promise we're not going to develop this territory. I mean, question to my debate opponent here, Joseph. What was the military strategy behind bulldozing over 19 Palestinian cemeteries in Gaza? And what was the military strategy behind bombing 300 plus, I believe it was 306, if I'm not mistaken, water wells inside of Gaza? What threat do water wells and Palestinian cemeteries in Gaza pose to the IDF?
Okay.
I'll add to that question, Joseph. Do you think there's a lot of points? Yeah, I'll let you go through them. But to add to that last question by Jackson, is the intention, like, it just looks like the bulldozing cemeteries, water wells, etc. Is it the destruction, just being very direct about it, is it the destruction of Gaza, or at least the Gaza territory occupied by Israel, for the reconstruction?
So I'll cover the ground. I'm going to start with the bodies. Please. And so ransoming our dead is something that's happened for millennia. So you can go to the Ottomans, you can go to medieval period. Jews would be killed, and because we attach huge religious significance to burial, they would ransom our dead for huge sums of money. Hamas have been doing this since Hamas have been fighting us. They've kidnapped both living and kidnapped both dead bodies. So when they came into Gaza, I mean, Jackson, you're laughing, but I've been respectful.
I'm laughing because you said burial is so important to us, my people, but you ignore the fact that they bulldoze 19 cemeteries.
Jackson, I'll get to all. I assure you.
Is it important, or are you going to bulldoze the cemeteries?
Well, I'll make sure you replace them.
I didn't interrupt you once. I didn't smirk at you. I will answer each of your questions.
Oh, I'll smirk at you. I have absolutely zero respect for genocide defenders like yourself. We're trying to whitewash the killing of hundreds of thousands of people.
You don't live here. You don't live here. You're a grift.
People disgust me. I'm so glad you're
not
Let's avoid.
I know we're going to say Joseph. We'll stop Jackson before. I know
I stopped myself as well, Mario. I bit my tongue. I bit my tongue.
I appreciate it. So I'll let you continue the point.
To come back to what I was saying.
I'll mention the points you can refer. So essentially, the point that Jackson made here is that Israel increased their territory from 53 to 58% after Hamas mistook the identity of one of the hostages, the deceased hostages, and they've given the wrong body to the Israeli government. So on that point, you're responding about the importance of deceased bodies.
So what I was going to say actually was on the bodies in particular, is that Jackson seems to think that Hamas would go to all of the trouble of October 7th, an operation they planned for years. They crossed in. Not only did they kill Israelis on the Israeli side, but they then brought the bodies back to Gaza, knowing the value of those bodies. They released the body of someone they've been holding for over a decade a couple of days ago. They know the significance of these bodies. These are a huge bargaining chip. So the reason I was bringing the religious and cultural significance of those bodies is because Israel will move mountains to bring back its dead so that families can have closure and for religious reasons. And so knowing that significance, Hamas know where the bodies are, which is why the IDF released the video of them staging the discovery of a body just a few days ago. You can go on the IDF feed and you can look at them taking a body, dropping it, burying it, and then discovering it. And so Hamas knows where the bodies are. I don't know what he's talking about, DNA kits. They know where the bodies are.
No, so on that point, I just want to counter that point. I'll let you continue because I know there's more points you want to make. But on knowing where the bodies are, I think there's even the Red Cross mentioned that it's not feasible to be able to find all the bodies, and it will take a long time to find those bodies. And Hamas didn't even have the equipment to be able to remove the rubble. That was by organizations including the Red Cross.
But Hamas agreed
because
they
might have known.
So
they might have known whether they might have but they might have. It does take time, and I think part of the agreement that it's expected to take, it was pretty vague on how long they have, but it's expected to take longer to find the deceased bodies. And I think you would agree, and you see my stance. I'm a bit critical of Israel's response to how long Hamas is taking. So that's my position, Joseph, as you could see. But it'd be expected, seeing how destroyed Gaza is and how lost Hamas is. And if they don't have communication, some of the soldiers in different areas, it is not far-fetched to accept the fact that they do not know where all these bodies are. Maybe not all of them. Maybe they do have some of them, and they are lying about some of them.
So what was the
There's
staging?
a lot of bodies.
What was the stage? I believe.
Could be staged. Could be propaganda. No,
I believe they know where every single one of those bodies are. It's their most powerful bargaining chip in the war. If they didn't know where it was, they'd make it a priority to know where it was, because they're literally the entire negotiation process hinges on these. The ceasefire hinges on these. To think that they've lost them is absurd. They have not lost them. They know where they are, which is why there's a video of them staging.
They've been decapitated. They've been decapitated. I think staging is propaganda. It's a stupid thing to do. Hamas has been decapitated. They've been just bombed to oblivion. Look at how Gaza is like. Look at Hamas's capabilities. There hasn't been a rocket fired into Israel for I don't know how long. Hamas today is not the Hamas 2 years ago. So that's why I just find it hard to believe that they would know where all the bodies are, considering how much destruction there's been.
But
I understand your position.
Exactly. Fine. You're not going to convince me. I'm not going to convince you. And it's so for the audience to decide.
On the point of DNA kits that Jackson made, he said that Gaza doesn't have DNA kits. But your point is that they'd know who these bodies are. If they find a body, they'll be able to test the body. So you believe that Hamas intentionally gave the wrong body to Israel?
I don't believe, as part of the negotiation process, Hamas were expecting to send bodies off to a lab to do DNA tests. Absolutely not. I believe they know where the bodies are. They've built a labyrinth of tunnels that dwarfs any other network of tunnels in the world under Gaza. They may have lost contact with individual units, but they will know where their most prized possession is, which is our dead, unfortunately, and obviously our living before they were released. Which is also
on the other point, the bulldozing of the cemeteries and water wells.
So the bulldozing in general. So, and I'll actually link it into something Jackson said before, because he's made a lot of different accusations, one of which is genocide. So I'm going to tie the genocide argument to the bulldozing argument, and then I'll let Jackson respond. And also the hospitals will all be linked into this. So,
and the water wells.
Yeah, the water wells, all of it. So if you look at Gaza, it looks like a hellscape. I think you have to be a monster to look at that and see it as anything but what it is. A living tragedy for millions of people. And the question is why? Why does Gaza look the way that it looks? Now, Jackson's argument is, I think it's maybe yours as well, Mario, is that it's intentional because they either want to destroy Gaza or build on top of Gaza. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth.
Yeah, that's not my position, but I'm very critical of it, but I don't know if it's intentional.
Okay. So,
but I know Jackson believes that for sure.
And so Israel is fighting. Israel was first and foremost forced into this conflict. We did not want this war. It's something that Hamas have been planning for years. You don't by chance build the biggest labyrinth of tunnels under Gaza, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, so much so we still don't know how many tunnels there are on the Israeli side. And you capture our living and our dead and bury them under huge civilian populations. There are tens of thousands of tunnel entrances all over Gaza. And so Israel is forced to fight in one of the most complex battle arenas that we've experienced, like that's experienced by any modern conflict. And what's Israel's response? I saw Jackson dancing, but I think he's signaling to someone else.
Yeah, I'm just saying, maybe speed up your AI Haavara cope.
That's okay. Joseph, I'll let you continue, Joseph.
Yeah,
so you're talking about
just like get to the question that I had for you about why they're bulldozing cemeteries and bombing water wells, destroying water wells.
Okay, Jackson, I'll let you take as long as you want. It's a conversation. We've got an hour and a half. I'm not interested in winning a debate here. I just want to stress, I'm interested in my children
putting out your propaganda,
and I'm interested in my neighbors' children. Yeah, so Jackson is very rich coming from you. Very rich coming from
on the point of the tunnels.
And not mention your Russian paymaster.
I'll go back onto the tunnels. So you're talking about having those, thousands of kilometers of tunnels. And I think you're linking them to the destruction of hospitals.
So according to the United Nations, 70% of the buildings in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. That's a lot of destruction. And without context, it's very hard to defend. But with context, you begin to understand why. So the first thing Israel does when waging campaigns in these areas is evacuate the civilians. There's 2 million people live in Gaza before the start of the war. And according to the Hamas Ministry of Health, the death toll is around 70,000, just shy of 70,000, which is a big number. But it includes all of the Islamic Jihad fighters, all of the Hamas fighters, as well as civilians who've tragically died in the war. But if it was 70% of the buildings, we'd expect that number, first and foremost, to be 70% of the people, because the three of us are sat in a building at the moment, and unless we're given warning to leave, when the bombs come, we're going to die. So Israel's made millions of phone calls, dropped millions of flyers, and evacuated those neighborhoods. And who's left in those neighborhoods now? Hamas. And so this is Israel's problem. Israel is fighting in an urban landscape where Hamas can pop up from a tunnel, can hit them from a sniper position. Building after building is booby-trapped, almost every other building.
To go back to the point, I understand your point about, and moving away from the genocide argument, because that will we could leave that for later if we have time. But to go back to the point that Jackson's making, he's talking about the bombing of water wells and the destruction of cemeteries. I think post ceasefire though. So that's post ceasefire, correct, Jackson? That's not during the war.
No, that's during
during the war.
That's it's during the war.
Okay. So your argument, Joseph, is because of the panels.
I've spoken. It's because literally this is an ongoing. Every other building in Rafah was booby trapped, and so if Israel had all the time in the world, they'd call in a bomb disposal team. They'd go building by building, but they don't have that luxury because it's an active conflict zone. So what happens is they take the building down to eliminate the risk, and I would rather see 70% of the buildings in Gaza destroyed than 70% of the people. The priority is keeping the civilians alive.
Joseph, before going to Jackson, I just got to ask you one question though. Is because the more this war went on, the more I became critical of Gaza, and the more the argument that this was intentional to destroy Gaza and the chances of a Palestinian state, it started making more sense. It started becoming more believable. Because if you look at things right now, Gaza's destroyed, 70-80% of buildings destroyed. I think the majority of people have someone killed, a loved one or a friend killed. 90% of people are displaced. And now they're talking, that quote by Ben Gvir, but this, Kushner made a similar quote, a lot less extreme, but he said something about, Israel may not let Palestinians that leave Gaza return to Gaza. He's talking about the real estate there and the potential there. Is there, at least has your mind shifted over time that maybe this was intentional, or you're very convinced the entire goal was the destruction of Hamas and not the eradication of Gaza as the region as it was, the Palestinian region as it was?
So what I would say, if you look at my record on this, my predictions of what's going to happen so far have been pretty aligned with what's happened. Jackson's not so much. Jackson's made a lot of predictions, and most of them don't materialize. So on the 27th of October, you said Israel is afraid to invade Gaza. On the 27th, we're afraid to go in.
I think they are afraid.
2023.
I think a lot of
2023. There's been 2 years of fighting.
You know what's interesting? Your Israeli media always fails to cover all these stories about these IDF troops coming back home and putting a bullet down their own throat, killing themselves as they cry and mourn over the fact that there's so many of their friends and comrades who went and fought in this genocidal war all got killed, injured, maimed, or committed unthinkable crimes against civilians. So, yeah, I remember when Hezbollah launched a drone strike at that mess hall. All of you guys were crying and curled up in a ball in the corner of the building. So, yeah, I think a lot of these TikTok soldiers are actually scared of it. I think it's been forced upon them.
It's very brave of you, Jackson, to fight to the very last Palestinian. But in reality, the entire leadership of Hamas is dead. The Nukba force is gone and recruited with kids who they've just recruited fresh from the street with minimal training. So what about those water
wells in those cemeteries? I'm still waiting.
So I've just finished my point. And so the point that Mario asked me, have I ever doubted what's going to happen? I have every confidence that Israel has no desire to ethnically cleanse, as the language you would use, the Palestinians from that territory. The opposite is true. I think what the strategy from
you don't think they want to kick out Palestinians. And I'll go back to the water wells. Jackson, but you don't think, not
obviously
kill,
there are Israelis.
So the Mario, Israeli government as a whole, the strategy, they don't want Palestinians out of Gaza.
So if you speak to, I'm sure Jackson. Well, actually, I'm not going to say I'm sure Jackson. I don't know. But many Palestinians would like to see the European colonizers, the Jews, kicked out of what they would call Palestine. It's a very common position for Palestinians to hold. I want the majority
one state, equal rights for everyone.
Okay, good. That's why I didn't want to put words in your mouth. And we're not too far apart then, Jackson. I don't want Gaza in that state.
I think you misunderstand what I say. Because I actually don't support bombing babies and bulldozing cemeteries and destroying water wells.
Except you do, because you glorified October the 7th. So except you do.
Yeah, except it was the IDF who launched their Apache attack.
Remind me, Jackson, how you talk about equal rights for all. Remind me, how many Jews live under the Palestinian Authority? How many Jews live under the
How many Jews in Israel were killed by IDF tanks and Apache attack helicopters?
Just answer my question. I've answered every question that you've asked me, Jackson, so far. Answer
my one question. The times of Israel and Haaretz, they gave us some interesting numbers.
Answer the one question.
Wait. But you do admit that the Haaretz article said that the Apache attack helicopters killed Israeli civilians.
Answer Jackson's point. I'd have him answer your point.
Yeah. So how many
So-
Israelis were killed by their Apache attack helicopters, as Haaretz reported?
I think I asked the question first, Jackson.
Oh, what was your question?
all right. So how
How
many
many Jews?
Jews
Because you're talking about equal rights for all. How many Jews live under the Palestinian National Authority as Palestinians?
In Gaza or the West Bank?
In both.
Probably not any.
Yes, probably because Article 6 of the National Charter bans Jews from citizenship.
Yeah, I don't
In
think.
contrast,
but
there's
to be
2 million. In
honest with
contrast,
you-
there's 2 million.
To be
In
honest
contrast,
with you,
there's
I
2.
don't
Then I'll
think-
answer your answer. I'll answer
To be
your question.
honest with you, I don't think any Jews want to live in a place that's getting bombed, starved, and turned into this hellscape that the IDF has turned it into. Israel is a Jewish supremacist state, so why would they allow their own people to live in a place where they have a very high likelihood of being killed, injured, maimed, or having something like that happen to their own families? In fact, there have been Jews that have been killed inside of Gaza. The hostages were killed inside of Gaza. Noah Argamani came out and admitted that fact, that Israel airstriked her position when she was in a building. It killed one of the Israeli hostages. Then when they were being transferred 24 hours later, Israel airstriked the cars that they were in once more, killing another hostage. We also have the instance in which the IDF went in commando and tried to do an evacuation, and they killed 3 Israeli hostages with gunfire when they were trying to evacuate them. So Gaza is not a safe place for Jews because of what the IDF has done to them there.
Okay, and now the point I was going to make is there are 2 million Arabs that live in Israel. Over 2 million. They have complete equality with Jews. Arab judges have sent Jewish prime ministers and Jewish presidents to jail. You'll find Arabs in government. You'll find Arabs in the judiciary. You'll find Arabs in the Arda. The reason I'm making this point is, let me just. I allowed you to go on your monologue.
Do their extended families, if they're Palestinian and they had like their homes taken away from them when the 750,000 Palestinians were forced out, do their families have the right to return like the Israelis?
So if there were a Palestinian state and the Palestinians accepted it, they would have the right to return.
They have the right
the
to
Palestinians
return. Like this guy won't answer questions.
No, Jackson, no, they don't. I'm answering your question. No, they don't.
He'll have an answer to those questions. And he won't answer the question about right to return.
He said no, they don't.
He said no, they don't. Let me land the point.
He said
about a Jew,
but the Palestinians don't.
He said they don't have the right to return. So Joseph said no. He was explaining why not, and I'll let him respond to the October 7th.
So that's not an equal. That's not equal. He said that they have equal rights.
And so again, there is not literally Palestinian law bans Jews from citizenship. If an Arab sells a house to a Jew, they face jail or death. There is literal apartheid under the Palestinians against Jews. You talk about ethnic cleansing. Every last Jew
according to you,
was
there is no
ethnically
Palestinian
cleansed.
State.
Jackson,
and I kind of agree with you.
The Palestinian National Authority, the Palestinian National Authority, control Area A and have partial control over Area B.
Authority. It's not even real. Mahmoud Abbas, this guy is such
who's governing Ramallah?
It's not a democratic government. You guys hold up Mahmoud Abbas
like this. It's so clear you've never been here. It's so clear you've never been here.
Everyone literally hates
you've been educated from TikTok.
Now, if you will,
you've never been
my question about the cemeteries, why they bulldoze cemeteries, and why they destroyed water wells.
Okay, we can go over that again. But
you never answered
for that one,
Joseph.
For that one,
Hamas have tunnels. You can literally look at videos of tunnels in cemeteries.
What does a cemetery have to do?
Take the hospitals. You mentioned the hospitals. You mentioned hospitals. You mentioned
on the bulldozing.
You don't know where the shaft is, Jackson.
Wait, Joseph.
On the cemeteries.
Silence. I talked about bulldozing cemeteries. Why did Israel bulldoze 19 cemeteries? Why did they destroy 300 plus water wells? Was Hamas hiding inside of a water well? Was Hamas hiding?
So your point, so let me answer
my answer.
Let me answer directly. Yep. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah.
And without putting words in your mouth, just try to expand on it. You think there were tunnel shafts and tunnels under the water wells, or next to the water wells and under the cemeteries?
You can look at videos online. You can look at videos of them in cemeteries. I can't speak for every ward.
What does bulldozing a cemetery have to do with a tunnel?
Because how would you find the tunnel shaft? If you block the tunnel shaft by bulldozing it, Hamas can't pop up out of it. It's pretty simple. to follow.
It's actually not simple, because if it was that simple, then why didn't the IDF just take bulldozers to the entire territory of Gaza that they bombed for the last 2+ years?
So that's literally what they've done. They've gone from area to area.
They don't need bombs then, do they? Then you just proved our argument. Why did they need to bomb 80% of the buildings?
Because you can't move a bull. You used to share the videos of Hamas hitting the bulldozers, yes? You used to share the videos with glee, yes?
I don't know.
I can go on your feed and show you videos. Pardon?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You've never shared the videos with the red triangles pointing at the IDF bulldozers.
Oh yes, of course.
Yes, thank you. So that's what I'm saying. So to avoid that, to avoid Hamas attacking the bulldozers, they have to remove Hamas from the area first and eliminate the threat.
As an invader.
So, I want to go to.
If someone invaded the United States, would they not be treated the same way?
So this is exactly who invaded who. They invaded us on October the 7th.
They
invaded us and they stole our people.
Of Gaza,
if you steal our, the weak-kneed Jews.
What type of Zionist mental Ben Shapiro gymnastics is this? If an IDF soldiers inside of Gaza, yes, they are an invader, right? We can agree on this common logic, right?
No. You've stolen our people. Okay, we are retrieving our people. You launch a war, you steal our people. We will rain hell on you until you return our people.
Retarded. What do you call it when you send your military into another territory that you do not control?
Hamas invade Israel on October the 7th?
Yes, that was an invasion. So what did Israel do in response?
Now let's just stop. Let's just
wait. What did Israel do in response?
They've now stolen our people.
Wait, are you that retarded? What did Israel do in response?
So again, it's not an invasion if we're.
So would you say, Joseph? Would you say Israel invaded Gaza to retrieve the people in response to October 7th invasion?
And we responded. We countered their invasion of Israel.
This guy's incredible. This guy's incredible. No. They bulldoze cemeteries to stop the terrorists. They destroy water wells to stop the terrorists. There's no genocide. There's no ethnic cleansing. And actually, Israel didn't even invade the territory. This is amazing. This is like, we're like Disneyland right now. It's complete fantasy world over here. They didn't invade.
We responded. They invaded us. They launched the war, and we respond. The invasion is on the aggressor, not on the defender.
Joseph, I'll try to. So, Joseph, would you say? I think the attack, the Israeli war in Gaza is justified after October 7th.
This guy's dumber than Shaboon.
I don't think the extent of the war is justified. That's my position, Joseph, at least for Gaza. But semantics aside, I don't know why you refuse to say. Actually, I'm curious, just without debating it, just Joseph, why are you avoiding the term invasion?
Would you say that
you believe it's
okay?
Because Jason said they'd say.
It's because he doesn't get his paycheck. He says invasion.
No.
You get your paycheck if you
avoid the personal attacks. Avoid personal attacks because we'll get you back. We'll get you back as well, Jackson.
So I just want to read a message from Haas because you keep on saying I'm getting my $7,000. What I have been doing here, because you haven't been briefed, I had to come to Russia to salvage our relations with forces in that country.
Look at how angry he is. He's so angry trying to defend the
Let's take a pause.
Let's take a
step back.
Who is your boss?
Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back. So just on the I understand. Jackson, you started with the personal attacks. Just quickly, Joseph, on the point of invasion, if you don't mind, what's the producers muted you guys, unless you muted yourself, but is there a reason, and I'm genuinely asking, is there a reason you're avoiding the word invaded? You can say justified invasion, but just curious on the word invasion, and if you don't think, is it because you believe Gaza should be part of Israel? Just trying to understand why you're not using the word invade, and respectfully asking.
No, I believe we're retrieving our hostages. I would rephrase it as we are retrieving our people. We've received our people. We've got them back with the exception of 4 bodies. An invasion is what it suggests an act of aggression. Israel is not the aggressor here. It is the defender. Now, Jackson, I want to ask you a very simple question. You keep on saying that I'm getting a $7,000 check. Now, your colleague, your brother-in-arms has emailed your colleagues and says, what I have been doing here, because you haven't been briefed, I had to come to Russia to salvage our relations with forces in that country because Jackson is losing favor with his boss there. Who is your Russian boss, Jackson?
My Russian boss is Tsar Nicholas II.
Nice deflection. Who's your Russian boss? Who's paying you?
Joseph Stalin.
Your growth isn't organic. Your growth isn't organic. I've noticed
You're
there's
right.
a lot of posts about China and Russia.
You're right. The
Who's
Russian
your
state,
boss?
which has relations with Israel, is bankrolling yours truly.
Has literally said, yes, this is true. I made this email. He's admitted he sent the email.
Look,
it's on the record. So who is your Russian boss? Who are you talking about? You're clearly talking about, he's clearly talking about someone.
At the end of the day, this is a colloquial phrase that was used for someone who actually does not employ me. I have no employer. I have an LLC in the United States. I'm self-employed, and that is my only source of income. That cannot be said about individuals like you who moved to Israel.
So moving
paycheck in person.
So just moving back to the
$7,000 so you can avoid using the word invasion. I'm very realistic. I'll talk about anything and I'll address any point. If you want to talk about Russia's invasion
you haven't
of
named
Ukraine,
your boss.
we can talk about that.
I'll ask you.
For some reason,
Jackson, I'm going to ask you. Jackson, I'm going to
simple point that this also is an invasion, and I just wonder why.
Someone give you a boss. Moving away from Jackson's boss and whether this is an invasion. Jackson,
why?
I've
answered every question. No, Mario. With all due respect, every question you've thrown at me, I've answered. I've asked two questions now, Jackson.
Didn't answer the question.
Explicitly.
So Jackson, I think Jackson, you did.
What's the name of your boss in Russia?
I just told you I don't have a boss.
So who is he talking about? Jackson is losing favor with his boss there.
It's a colloquial understanding of a person who represents an organization that takes people to the Donbass on trips. I'm not associated with this person financially. I don't have any monetary ties to this person. But
so why is Haz flying there to win favor with him again?
Because you've lost me because I wouldn't go to the Donbass. So he went to the Donbass. And he paid for his own ticket. Right. He paid for his own trip. I don't know. I think it's pretty simple.
Here's the real $7,000, guys. Pay attention. Wait, go for my emails. You won't find me talking about anyone being my boss.
I don't have a boss.
Your question. Jackson is employed by the Russians.
Guys, I'm gonna go. Jackson, I'm gonna go to Lebanon if you don't mind.
Lebanon. If I had a boss, why would I need to do anything I do? Why would I need to have my own YouTube? Why would I need to monetize anything?
To get paid. That's why they pay you.
Unlike
That's why they pay you.
You can't even monetize your own Twitter account. You can't monetize your YouTube account. You have no followers.
Because I'm not here to make money. I'm not a grifter like you. I'm here to make the future safer for my children. You're a grifter, a warmonger, a war profiteer. You are a war profiteer. You incite others to fight so you can make
I'm not a war
I incite others to make peace.
You are the one
so my children
I have a question for you. Joseph, what do you think of Jackson?
200,000 being killed inside of Gaza.
Joseph, I have a question. No need to mute. No need to mute. KK. Joseph, I have a question on Jackson.
Wait.
What do you think of Jackson giving?
A war profiteer, and we're just going to gloss over that. This guy's the one who's out here defending bombing 200,000 Palestinians. And by the way, do you acknowledge that simple fact that 200,000 Palestinians have been killed or injured?
Joseph, you got to unmute.
Hamas have put the number at 69,000 and maybe 10,000 dead under the rubble. So you may have better information than Hamas. You have better information than Hamas.
No.
I will go with Hamas's number. And I think Hamas's numbers are inflated.
I think it does.
It includes all of the Islamic Jihad and Hamas. And it includes all of the fighters there as well.
Why didn't Halevi, the former IDF chief, why did he say that 10% of Gaza's population has been killed or injured since they started their operation?
He can say what he wants. Hamas have the best understanding of who's being killed.
Wait, so you're denying the official state line from Israel that they slaughtered 200,000 or injured 200,000?
The identification number of every...
I'm just citing what the Israeli government said.
The Israeli government doesn't say that.
They literally
say they don't know how many civilians. The official position from Israel, they don't know how many civilians.
The IDF
they know how many Hamas.
Joseph, you've criticized a few things about Jackson. I'll ask you a specific question. I'm really fascinated by this. So I know you disagree with a lot of the points that Jackson's making, but I want to get your take on. There's some things he says I disagree with. Actually, a lot of things. as critical as I am of what's happening in Gaza. But there's one thing he does that polarizes people, is that he interviews people that usually no one dares to interview, whether it's leaders in Yemen, Hamas leaders. I think you've gone to Iraq as well, Jackson. You've interviewed one of the groups in Iraq or Syria. I think it's Iraq. Was it Iraq? Iraq. So, Joseph, my question to you is, and that kind of goes to the whole debate that's happening in the US between Tucker and Ben Shapiro. What are your thoughts on giving a voice, interviewing, even if you disagree with what they say, giving a voice to the people that usually don't get a voice on most mainstream media platforms? And just to be clear, even people like me sometimes would think twice before interviewing those members, even though I'm open to interviewing anyone, because of the amount of criticism and targeting that we face.
So, yeah, I think you're conflating two things. Journalists have interviewed Hezbollah. Journalists have interviewed Hamas. Like, it's a very common thing to do. Hamas are never off the news. How are they getting on the news? They're being interviewed. There's not an issue interviewing members of prescribed terror groups. The issue is when you endorse or support them. The objection to what
I would never
Jackson
endorse
does,
Israel.
Well done, mate.
No
Hysterical.
terrorist organization I will ever endorse.
Jackson, you spent a lot of time with the Houthis. What does this mean? Al-Maut America, Al-Maut Israel.
Look at this guy. He's so full hip. He can speak Arabic. He literally sounds like a retard saying it, but he can speak Arabic.
Al-Yahud. Al-Yahud.
You literally sound...
What does it mean?
You literally sound like
Jackson, I'll explain to the... I think he doesn't. I don't think he speaks Arabic, Jackson. But I'll explain to the point.
But this is the reason
I know what he's saying.
The reason I'm making that point is he stood at a stadium where they said Al-Maut America, Al-Maut Israel, Allah. Sorry, Allah al.
You sound retarded. Just stop. It's cringe.
So Jackson, hold on.
What's I'm saying?
Before I respond to it, Joseph, one last question. Do you think people like Jackson, even if let's say he supports the Houthis, which are a prescribed terrorist organization, do you think free speech should allow him to do that?
Tricky
question.
No. I think if you're supporting a prescribed terrorist organization, you belong in jail. That's American law. It's British law. It's Israeli law.
It's not American law.
I don't know about Russian law because I'm
not American
with
law.
it. What, giving material support to terrorists?
You changed what you said. You said material support. No, I think that's different.
Now, he said initially support. So essentially, not material support, but supporting in terms of opinion and free speech.
See how tricky these Zionists are with their words?
So, for example, let's say Jackson. So I think let's avoid the personal attacks because we'll go back to Russia. So, Joseph, on the point of, let's say, making points that oppose U.S. policy. For example, making the point that the Houthis are, what they're doing is self-defense, or criticizing Israel and saying Houthis are defending the Palestinians, defending the Palestinian cause. Do you think this should be allowed?
Sorry, say it again.
So supporting positions that the Houthis or Hezbollah take, not material support, but supporting their positions, do you think that falls under free speech? I know this is a bit more extreme than what we're seeing between Shapiro. So let's say, what's a position
what I think isn't relevant? I care about American law. I care about British law. I care about the law.
You don't even know American law.
What I wanted to know from Jackson is, do you know what I was saying?
Yes, I know what you're saying.
So can you translate it for us, just to make sure that you know?
Death to America, death to Israel, curse upon the Jews.
Okay, so now can you explain how you celebrated with an entire stadium full of people screaming this?
Well, Dick Cheney is dead and burning in hell for the millions of people that he was responsible for the deaths of. So I guess they got their wish there, insofar as the deep
God's
state
curse upon the Jews.
God's curse upon the Jews. Being
if you're not an anti-Semite, justify God's curse upon the Jews.
Actually, the phrase directly translates to damn upon the Jews.
No, Lana is cursed. Lana is cursed.
It's actually not, because I'm pretty sure you weren't the one with the leadership of Ansar Allah. It was me.
I'm the one who understands Arabic.
Pretty sure you weren't the one with the Supreme Political Council of Ansar Allah. It was me.
So just for the record, Jackson, you've got a lot of Muslim followers. Mario's got a lot of Muslim followers. Arabic speakers. They will tell you that Lana is cursed.
Ask the Ansar Allah Political Bureau. I mean, they'll tell you what it is. But look,
So do you think? But do you think on the point on
the
Jews,
truth of
the
the matter
targeting
is,
Jews? Go, Jackson.
Curse the Jews. Curse the Jews. Defend it.
Okay, the truth of the matter, I have no hate in my heart for any single group of people, whether it is a nationality, a religion, an ethnicity, a gender, anything like that. I don't have any hate in my heart. I think some people, of course, try to launder some sort of idea that there is a unique identity that is inherited genetically amongst groups or civilizations of people, or amongst people who come from a certain country of origin. And that's why you see that the Israeli government has labeled all these people as terrorists inside of Gaza, and why they have no problem with bombing 80% of the buildings, forcing 90% of the people to be displaced multiple times, sometimes 10 times, and why they've killed.
So you're saying that's because they're Jews? I'm just trying to follow what you're saying.
They believe that there is a genetic malfunction for terror in the hearts and in the bodies of each and every Palestinian. So
what's
for
that
anyone
got to do with death up to Israel,
so do you think this
cursed
is
upon the Jews?
So
yeah,
do
but
you disagree?
the difference between them and Israel is that Yemen is not slaughtering 200,000 people. Israel
how many
is,
Jews
and
used
they
to live
are
in
right
Yemen
now
do
before
you
the-
disagree? Do you disagree with that statement, though, Jackson? Cursed are the Jews, or whatever the term is. Cursed
Yes,
are the
I do.
Jews.
I
Jews.
do
Allah
disagree
curse
with
upon
that
the
statement,
Jews.
of
Okay,
course,
you
of
do
course.
disagree. So Jackson, you do disagree with that statement. So Joseph, I think
Of
the
course,
same way
but
Jackson.
Yemen is not the one who slaughtered 200,000 people because they come from a certain ethnic background.
What's the death toll of the Yemen civil war?
The death toll of the ISIS terrorists funded by the UAE and Saudi Arabia,
What's the death toll?
who were bombing civilians left and right all across their country at a point in time when you had the largest humanitarian crisis in the world taking place for years because the Biden administration refused to lift
And
the
the
naval
Houthis killed no one in that war, right? The Houthis didn't kill anyone.
I don't know. It just seems like you want to ascribe any death that has ever taken place in Yemen to Ansar Allah, which is historically inaccurate, and even people who support the opposition would admit that.
I didn't say that. I said Houthis have killed civilians and I'll be explicit, Houthis have killed civilians in Yemen.
Well, you actually said, what is the death toll? And if you take into account the mass starvation that took place in
okay, so that's fine. You take back what you said. I said all I said was, what's the death toll?
Conflict.
So guys, I want to pivot. The last thing, the main developments right now happening in Lebanon and Syria. Jackson, you've been very critical of al-Shara. You've seen him meet Trump. I think they just met. Oh no, sorry, about to meet Trump. And there's been talks about a peace deal between Syria, or some sort of agreement between Syria and Israel. The report says any second or any day. Is he doing the right thing? Is he trying to rebuild Syria? Or are you surprised by his intentions and his progress so far? Because I think that could be al-Shara could be one point that you both agree on. I might be the one disagreeing with you guys on this point, but are you impressed by his progress so far?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, Jackson. Yeah, because I know you were critical. I think you're supportive of Assad.
Well, Assad had many problems. No memes. He had real problems that he failed to address, and that's why the Russians ultimately didn't come and save Syria a third time after facing this massive threat. But when you look at Jolani, obviously, I mean, this guy, I know it's been wiped from his Wikipedia, but this guy is the former leader of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hayat al-Sham. I mean, he spent his 20s beheading people all across Iraq and Syria. He's not a native of Syria. Now he's in the governing position. I think he's trying to moderate his positions. I think secretly we all know he's a terrorist that wants to behead any sort of ethnic minority or religious minority inside of Syria. We see that happening with the threat against the Druze. We see that with the Alawites. Thank God the Russians have some leverage there. I think it's a terrible position, but they've been able to keep the Tartus base and protect some of the Alawites. And I don't think Trump should be meeting with him. China said that they're not going to lift the terrorist designation on Jolani. I think that's the right position for any government to take, considering what this guy represents. The only point I'll make is that if this guy falls, it's going to get very, very, very bloody in Syria, much worse than it's been over the past year. And no one wants to see any of this happen. But even Rubio pointed that out, that civil war could very well take place in Syria soon, and it's going to be absolutely terrible. And the last thing I'll say, I guess, quickly, is that it was Israel who provided medical assistance, documented medical assistance. They admit this in the Times of Israel. Former Israeli IDF generals admit this, that they provided medical assistance and armed the quote-unquote moderate rebels in Syria against Assad that brought us to this point.
Joseph, I'd like you to respond, but also on al-Shawara's developments recently with the meeting with Trump, and also the fact that Israel continues to strike Syria.
So deal with the last comment Jackson made first and then address the others. The Good Neighbor Project is exactly that, a Good Neighbor Project. It helped. It was a hospital that was set up in the north of Israel, and it helped thousands and thousands of Syrian civilians. And there is testimony after testimony you can watch online. In fact, I use a video app to connect with random people on the internet to make the content I made. And it matched me with a Muslim from Israel, and asked them, Mayfor, where are you from? And he said, Syria. I said, what are you doing in it? You're Muslim. How did you get here? And Israel rescued me. They saved me. They saved my family. The Good Neighbor Project was exactly that. People will try and twist it and turn it into something that it isn't. It literally was a hospital set up to help the civilians of the Syrian war, which ravaged that region for a decade. Now, as for Jelani, I'm personally not a fan. I love the Druze. I kind of agree, it's rare to say, but I agree with Jackson. He's a terrorist in a suit. But where me and Jackson will depart is, I agree that he potentially could be a stabilizing, or what could come after him if he falls could be much worse than the weak stability that Syria is seeing at the moment. Although it is very vulnerable and could fall at any point. But the Druze, who I stand with, and so when you saw what happened in Salida,
the strikes, but the strikes were, I know there were strikes in support of in solidarity with the Druze that were being attacked.
It was to prevent a genocide.
Correct, but there were a lot of other strikes that were unrelated to that continue to this day. Do you think those should stop by Israel?
Yeah,
in spirit
Israel
of ceasefire?
So Israel is a tiny nation that's surrounded by tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people that want to see its destruction. And we don't have the luxury of allowing our enemies to build up, be it Iran, be it whomever, positions to attack us on our borders. So Israel will act to eliminate threats as they rise. A positive break with Syria is that if Syria joins the Abraham Accords, that would be an end to those, because they would have to block any of the militias that pose a threat to us. They would have responsibility to stop that, in the same way that we haven't struck Jordan, we haven't struck Egypt, who are also on our borders. I'd hope to see the same with Syria.
Yeah, that's the argument I make when
this guy's lying about. He says, "Oh, it's just like a hospital." I also said that they armed the moderate rebels, ISIS, Al Qaeda. And you don't even have to look that hard to find it. I mean, IDF chief Halevi literally said that he said that they prefer ISIS to Assad on their borders. The former defense minister of Israel said that we prefer ISIS to Iran on our borders. And there was also a former IDF general that admitted that they funded and armed them and gave them medical supplies.
So that was not true.
In
terms
field
of
hospital,
who you'd rather on your border, is Iran is one of
in
the
his
most powerful
speech,
nations
Israel's
in the region.
military intelligence chief, Major General Herzi Halevi, took Israel's longstanding position that it prefers ISIS over the Syrian government to a whole nother level, declaring openly that Israel does not want to see ISIS defeated in the war. That's from Times of Israel.
So I'll check. But I'll check what he's saying, because I'm
so on
not
that.
There
are a lot of
ISIS
reports
supporters and baby killers inside your disgusting country. I hope one day I am close enough to spit on the ground of your disgusting country. I'll only kiss it when it's freed for the Palestinian people and for the Christians that are being prosecuted. Hey, by the way, what does bombing churches inside of Gaza do to help the IDF cause? What does bombing over 800 mosques in Gaza do to help the Israeli cause? And I'm assuming you're going to tell me that the
Well, what does
terrorists were hiding inside
launching
of the
rockets from
mosques
those
or the
mosques
churches
and
again?
those hospitals?
Yeah, because
Tell me,
you killed a bunch of
how does the
of
leader
people who
of
were seeking
Hamas,
refuge inside of the church.
how does the leader of
Absolutely
Israel
Let him
disgusting
respond. Let him,
country.
Jackson. Let
You
him
spit
respond. Let
on
him respond.
Christians
Jackson.
when they
Jackson.
come to your
All right, Jackson.
country.
Let him.
You have
how
no
does
respect for the Christian faith.
A lot of attacks on Israel. Joseph, I'll let you respond. It's pretty aggressive
how
attacks on Israel.
so very quick question. How does the leader of Hamas's military wing hiding under
Yeah, I
a
asked you about
hospital
why you
help
guys
the
are bombing
Palestinians?
churches and spitting on
And I
Christians.
might
But thanks for deflecting
the
again.
answers. So spitting on
Oh,
Christians.
the
You're right.
terrorists. We had the bulldoze the cemeteries.
In the one country where there's hundreds of
We had
churches
to destroy
and
the
millions
water
of
wells.
Let him
Christians
respond,
come here on
Jackson. Let him-
pilgrimage every
Jackson, hold on.
and
Let him respond,
millions of
please.
Christians come here every year on pilgrimage.
And they get
Hundreds
spit
of
on.
churches.
Even Brandon
No,
Tatum
they
admitted he got spit on when he was there.
No, they who?
Yes, he did. He was in an interview with Netanyahu, and he said,
Who?
"You know, I was surprised I only got
Who's
spit
that?
on
Who's
once
that,
when I
Jackson?
was in Israel."
Who's that? Who's
Who?
that? Who's that?
Officer Tatum. He did an interview with Netanyahu.
So I'll watch it. I'm sure it said tongue in cheek because Christians are free in Israel.
No, it's
There's
not.
hundreds of
There's
churches.
tons of Christians
There's
that
hundreds
travel there,
of
they get
churches
spit
that
on.
are protected by Israeli law. Millions of tourists come here every single year.
Yeah,
They would
protected
not
by
be doing that if
Israeli
they get
law that
spat
doesn't
on.
allow the
I
right to
literally
return
bring
for
Jackson. The
Palestinians.
So
difference
Jackson-
between me and
You're
you, Jackson, the
extremely
difference is
equal and
I
fair.
bring Christians here
So fair and
onto. I
equal.
had a Christian in my house
Oh,
a
this
few
guy is
days
so
ago.
angry.
We went on a
This mother-
tour. No
this
one
guy-
spat on him.
Why is he
You're
so angry?
lying.
It's
You're
insane.
lying.
So
This is why-
Jackson,
this is why
the
Gaza
last
needs
topic
ice.
I want to talk about is Lebanon. What's happening in Lebanon? That one is a bit more nuanced. The part of the agreement between Lebanon and Israel is for Hezbollah to disarm, and that there's been a lot of reports that Hezbollah continues arming. There's been reports of multiple violations and arms coming in from Syria, and Israel has used that information to justify strikes on Lebanon, Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. According to UNIFIL, there's been reports of 1,500 violations by Israel on Lebanon, but there's also been reports of about 200 instances of weapons being smuggled from Syria into Lebanon to the country. What's the path forward for Lebanon? The US has offered support for the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah, offered military assistance, reconstruction aid, and Israel's given a deadline of December for that to happen. What do you think, Jackson, is the solution when it comes to Lebanon? Yeah, Jackson.
Well, the solution when it comes to Lebanon, starts of the solution would be for the Israeli military to pull out of the regions that they currently occupy. It would be for the Israeli military not to build a border wall on the new territory that they occupy in Lebanon. It would be for Israel to stop with the ceasefire violations, stop bombing Lebanon literally each and every day, whether it's drone strikes on certain personnel, I'd assume are probably Hezbollah, or bombings that target innocent civilians, just like they do in Gaza.
And if Israel pulls out, should Hezbollah disarm as well? Do you think Hezbollah should disarm if Israel pulls out? For the Lebanese government to be the only military in the country? The Lebanese armed forces?
It's a decision for them to make. I mean, historically, that's not been such a great idea because it turns out that a lot of people in Hezbollah don't want to give up their arms. And it also turns out that a lot of people in Lebanon, even those that are not Shia, understand that Hezbollah is the security force that prevents Israel from taking the entire swath of the south of Lebanon. So they might not even like Hezbollah as a political institution, which it is. They have members of parliament, but they understand the role it plays as a security infrastructure in the south. So no, I don't think that they should disarm, but ultimately, I guess that would be a decision for the Lebanese people, not for me to say.
So the Lebanese government has voted for Hezbollah to disarm, but they're just unable to do so. They don't have the strength, they don't have the equipment to do so, to even blow up all the ammunition. But Joseph, the argument that Jackson's making, people in Lebanon are making, is that, so first, Hezbollah is already disarmed south of the Litani River. Yet Israel has not pulled out of the territory. They continue to hold these positions.
Not the case. They haven't disarmed south of the Litani River because when you see the strikes, I think, if not all of them, the overwhelming majority are south of the Litani River. We're hitting Hezbollah positions where they have
I'll
arsenals,
rephrase.
where
You're
they
right.
have
I'll
weapons.
rephrase. So they've begun disarmament. So we've seen a lot of reports, and a lot of videos of the Lebanese military disarming and confiscating.
So the
Equipment.
Lebanese military is trying to, but the military isn't capable. As you just pointed out, the military isn't capable, and Israel's not just going to sit on its hands like UNIFIL did and allow Hezbollah to stockpile thousands of rockets. At one point, there was hundreds of thousands of rockets pointing at Israel in the south of Lebanon. And Jackson, just like with Gaza, is willing to proudly fight for the Lebanese until the very last Lebanese person dies. It's very brave. And just like Gaza, these cheerleaders of war who sit on their X accounts, online, on YouTube.
Bro, this guy's still cheerleading about bombing Lebanon, bombing Gaza, and he's talking about cheerleaders of war. In Lebanon, in the south,
you'll notice how Jackson, whenever I speak, he talks over me because he's afraid of what I say. He's afraid of
let me do this, Joseph. Let me do this. Let me ask. Let me do this. Joseph. I'll give you the
loved ones,
Joseph,
and Israel's bombing them as they go back to their homes in the south of
Jackson,
Lebanon.
Let me ask the final question.
You're still a war profiteering grifter.
South of Lebanon.
Let me ask the final question.
You're still a war profiteering
Joseph,
grifter.
let me ask this question. Joseph. Let me ask you this question, Joseph and Jackson. It's the final question to both. So, Joseph, the question to you is, what are you most critical about when it comes to Israel? What do you think is the biggest mistake they've done throughout this war? That's number one. And number two, what are you most critical about with Jackson? You've criticized a lot of things, but what is the one thing, he's got the right to speak his mind. You agree with him when it comes to Al-Shara. What is the one thing that bothers you the most, or they disagree with the most when it comes to Jackson's positions? So two questions. And maybe the one I'm interested in is the thing you disagree with Israel the most on.
So the thing I disagree with Israel the most on, I think the war was too long. We shouldn't have succumbed to American pressure, and we should have ended the war at least a year ago. 2 years of fighting is horrendous, and it's been a huge cost for the Israeli people and a huge cost for the people of Gaza as well. And so, yeah, the duration of the war, it should have been fought much further. As for faster,
would that include the destruction that we've seen in Gaza as well, the extent of that destruction, or you think that one was inevitable based on the tunnels? Argument you made earlier?
I don't know. I'd imagine the level of destruction of buildings is inevitable. The highest number of casualties was at the beginning of the war, and when Israel wasn't able to take those same measures. And so I think anything Israel can do to minimize civilian casualties is noble. And sorry.
Do you think they've done enough on that front?
I think they've done more than any other military in the history of warfare to minimize civilian casualties. Can you name it? Like, in the middle of the war, and the overwhelming majority of Gazans are hostile to Israel, and in the middle of the war, Israel vaccinated 1 million Gazans, the majority of whom were children. Like, I can't think of another nation that does that. I can't think of another nation that sacrifices the advantage of being able to surprise the enemy to warn civilians to leave, creating maps and safer zones to move hundreds of thousands of people every time we go into a city to save them. Had they not done that, the death toll would have been over 1 million, and thank God it isn't.
One last thing, sorry, Joseph, before we go to Jackson, is what about the aid? The aid trucks being, I think it's about 30% of what they should be.
Israel has delivered 2 billion kilograms of aid. That's, like, for context, if you were to take per person, that's every single day for every person in Gaza, over 1 kilogram of aid. And so you're talking about the latest. So just for context, that 2 kilograms is 100,000 trucks. 100,000 trucks delivered 2 kilograms. Now, the agreement was for 600 trucks to go in a day. 600 trucks, just for context, is 6 kilograms of aid per person a day in Gaza. Now, I don't know, you guys, you both look quite slim. I'd struggle to eat 6 kilograms of rice or vegetable, of the food that's being delivered. And so even with Israel withholding some of the aid, there is an abundance of aid going into Gaza. Another example of something I disagreed with, by the way, I disagreed with the freeze on the aid when there was a freeze because they wanted to prevent Hamas from stealing and recruiting with it. But that's a whole separate debate to open up. But just very quickly,
disagree with the freeze. You disagree with the Israeli freeze of aid.
Yeah.
Okay. So
not the
and then the second part of the question. And the second part of the question, the second part of the question, what do you disagree with the most with Jackson?
Well, it's very simple. It's very simple. Jackson is a spectator who gets rich on the blood of Palestinians and Israelis. My children, my neighbors' children. He incites and encourages war with engagement farming and trying to create cliques and traveling around the world, inciting violence, which he will never have to fight. His children will never die in this conflict. His children will never die. My children and their neighbors, they're the ones that will die.
Name me a ceasefire I didn't support in this war.
If Jackson devoted his time
when
the
IDF wanted to go into Rafah, what did you support?
I'm not going to interrupt you. You're going to have the last word.
I'll let you respond, Jackson. Go ahead, Joseph. I'll let you finish.
Did you support
I'll let you respond to. I'll let you respond to all of them, Jackson. Yeah, Joseph, I'll let you finish your point.
Okay, so Jackson is not. He's not pushing for peace here. He pushes for war continuously. He endorses Hamas, denies October the 7th, sides with Houthis who kill American Hezbollah, who kill Americans, He incites violence rather than peace to get rich. He makes tens of thousands of dollars from this conflict. He makes jokes about collecting a $7,000 check. It costs me money to do the work that I do. It literally costs me money. And I devote my life to making peace with my neighbors. I'd love to see people like Jackson devoting their energy to making peace rather than making bank.
Jackson, the two questions, I'll let you respond to the points by Joseph made as well. But the first question is, what do you disagree with the most and that Hamas did? What is one thing, and I'm hoping it's October 7th, or at least how October 7th was handled at least, but maybe something else that you disagree with Hamas the most? And then the thing you disagree with Joseph the most.
I don't know. I mean, Joseph is in a different position than I am because I don't know if he's an Israeli citizen. I don't know, but he's at least living in Israel.
I am. I'm an Israeli citizen.
I'm not Palestinian. I don't have citizenship. I don't live there. And I've never been to the West Bank or Gaza. So it's a little bit different for me to say something like that. But I think the biggest thing that they could have done maybe more of is make an effort to get the message out, I guess, in the media when they were trying to push for ceasefires, which, by the way, Joseph said, I support war. I literally supported every single effort made by the Palestinians to secure a ceasefire, such as the moments before Israel invaded Rafah and the Palestinians were offering to release all of the hostages at that point to secure and safeguard any sort of invasion of Rafah. Before the war, the invasion, which I guess Joseph calls a hostage relief attempt or something like that, hostage recovery attempt. He doesn't want to call it an invasion. Before the invasion took place, Hamas said the same thing. They said, we will have a ceasefire. We will give you all the hostages if you just don't bomb all the civilians in Gaza, because everyone knew what Israel was going to do, which is what we all saw happen over the past 2+ years, which is they went in and they have occupied a bunch of territory. They blew up 80% of the buildings. And according to the IDF former chief, Halevi, they've either killed or maimed 200,000 people in these attacks. So I've
easier for you, Jackson, on disagreeing with something with Hamas, though.
Hamas didn't put out the message for when they supported the ceasefire.
More than PR. If you went back in time, but just one thing, sorry. If you went back in time, though, knowing what you know now, if you went back in time 2 years, if you're sitting with Hamas, would you recommend they do not proceed with October 7th?
I asked that question because, I'm not, so I asked that question to the Hamas Politburo member that I interviewed. I said, would you rather have what's happening now, this genocide, or would you rather have the slow burn of ethnic cleansing over generations and generations, which eventually seeks to displace the Palestinians from Gaza and slowly starve them, as we saw for generations prior to this point, where skirmishes break out every so often, battles break out every so often. Israel does strikes that kill several hundred people, thousands of people maybe at the most. And then very rarely we have a major war. And he said, well, neither is really an option. Neither are good. It's like choosing how you want to die. I mean, the Palestinian people understand that if not what happened now, and now the majority of the world is opposed to Israel, the majority of the world sees Israel's crimes, the majority of the world stands with Palestine, the majority of Jews in America stand against Israel. The majority of Jews, 60% of American Jews say that Israel is committing war crimes. 38% say that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. So I think that the Palestinians, at the end of the day, they just see both options as dying and their people dying out. And it's just a matter of whether it happens quickly, but the world wakes up to what's happening and maybe there's an intervention, or it happens slowly and no one wakes up and it happens over generations. So I want to make it very clear. I supported, to respond to what he said, I supported every effort by the Palestinians to secure a ceasefire. And historically, prior to October 7th, I advocated vociferously for a Palestinian state, even when I was very young in high school. And I went to, I mean, what can you do if you're in high school, right? And you have no political voice. But I tried to make my voice heard at protests online and whatnot to advocate for Palestinian statehood. That dream was crushed by the signing of the Abraham Accords and the advancement of the Abraham Accords. And clearly what happened on October 7th and what subsequently took place with Israel's genocide resulted in a change of opinion from Saudi Arabia. They now say that they won't join the Abraham Accords unless there's a Palestinian state. So I think that kind of covers everything. Oh, he said something
You've
about
responded to Justice.
Hezbollah and Yemen killing Americans. Hezbollah and Yemen weren't the ones who bombed American dual citizens inside of Gaza and refused to allow the survivors to leave. I don't know. The U.S. government claims that Yemen didn't kill their Navy SEALs off the coast of Sana'a or at the coast of Hodeidah, but maybe they did. Maybe they hid that fact. There were some Navy SEALs that died. So maybe Yemen killed those American citizens, those Navy SEAls, but Hezbollah hasn't killed American citizens. I know you guys like to bring out this old lie, this trope from like 40 years ago, but the truth is Israel has killed more Americans than Yemen or Hezbollah or Iran, the most recent one being Charlie Kirk, and I don't think they're going to stop.
Well, all right. Well, we won't get into the Charlie Kirk story. Joseph, just a quick response on Jackson, and we'll wrap it up. Especially the last point about the amount of Americans that Hezbollah and the Houthis have killed. Because Hezbollah, I think it's in the 80s, was the last strike on the barracks.
Hezbollah have bombed American, but exactly, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
In the
I believe,
80s,
right,
yeah.
Mario? Yeah. And the Houthis have been bombing American ships, British ships off the coast. Hezbollah, and as for dual citizens, Hezbollah regularly kill dual citizens, American dual citizens that happen to be Israeli. So you can say that Palestinian Americans have been killed. Israeli Americans have also been killed at the hands of Hezbollah, if that's your argument. But yes, absolutely, Hezbollah have targeted and killed American personnel. I'm not going to go to the Charlie Kirk because I don't do crazy conspiracy theories, but it's, anyone can check the historical record. Hezbollah have killed many American personnel.
Guys, Joseph, first time we meet. Appreciate your time. And Jackson, good to see you again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.